The boy crouched beneath the bridge like a shadow no one noticed, 12 years old or maybe younger, thin, filthy. The soles of his sneakers were torn open like mouths. His breath made small clouds in the cold morning air. And in his hand, a wallet, thick, heavy, expensive. His fingers trembled as he clutched it to his chest, not from guilt, from hunger, the kind that clawed at his belly like a beast. He hadn't eaten in 2 days, not properly, not anything warm. Above him, cars rushed by on the overpass, their hum as indifferent as the sky. Beneath the bridge it smelled of damp concrete, old piss, and ash from burnt garbage. A sleeping bag was balled into the corner where he'd been resting, barely enough insulation between him and the cold earth. He held the wallet like it might bite, thumbed it open slowly. Inside, cash, so much it looked fake. Hundreds, a few 20s, a picture of a family. A man in a business suit holding a little girl, a woman with kind eyes, an address, a name on a license. The boy whispered, as if someone might hear, "Don't take it." His voice cracked with the strain of saying what he didn't want to mean. He stared at the photo, his eyes locked onto the little girl's face, her missing front teeth, her pink plastic earrings. She couldn't be more than 6. He closed the wallet. He couldn't explain why. Not really. No one would know if he took it. He'd been told again and again, by the world, by strangers, by his own bruises, that no one cared what he did, that he didn't matter, that street kids like him were invisible, disposable, unworthy. But he clung to the wallet like it was something sacred, because somehow he still believed in right. Somewhere, deep inside the grime and hurt, the boy held on to something fragile and stupid and beautiful. The belief that maybe one good choice could still mean something. And though his stomach ached, though his bones felt like glass, he stood. He walked toward the city, toward the address on the ID, and with every step the world seemed to whisper back. This was not the first time the boy chose honesty, but it might be the first time anyone noticed. Zara stood behind the register like she had for the past 5 years, her spine straight, face calm, hands efficient. She scanned items with practiced rhythm, beep, slide, bag, beep, slide, bag. Her name tag was faded, the corners of her apron were frayed. She never noticed anymore. Routine had become armour. The grocery store buzzed around her, customers mumbling, carts squeaking, the intercom humming out static announcements. But Zara moved through it, untouched, like a ghost in her own life. She didn't chat, she didn't smile unless absolutely necessary. People often said she seemed strong, like it was a compliment, but strength was a necessity, not a choice. The kind of strength you earn when no one else is coming to save you. In her pocket, zipped inside a worn brown wallet with a broken clasp, was a photo. Creased in the middle, the colours fading, her son, 6 years old, big eyes, half a smile. His name was Elijah. No one at work knew about him, no one asked. She preferred it that way. Zara lived in a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The ceiling leaked when it rained. She cooked for one, ate in silence, cleaned obsessively, not because she loved order, but because chaos frightened her. She'd seen what happened when life slipped out of control. Once she trusted people, trusted love, trusted a man who said he'd stay. She didn't anymore. Her co-workers didn't dislike her, but they kept their distance. Something about her eyes made them unsure, not cold, just far away, as if her thoughts were somewhere they couldn't follow, somewhere heavy, somewhere private. Today, as she handed change to a customer, her fingers lingered a second too long on the register. Something was off. She felt it before she saw it. Her wallet, it wasn't there. Her hand shot to her apron pocket, then to her coat. Her breath hitched. Not the cash, that didn't matter. The photo Her son's picture, the only one she had, the only one left. A heat rose in her chest, slow and suffocating. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "Please, no." People passed her. The store carried on, but something inside Zara trembled, and not from the loss itself, from what it might mean if that last thread, Elijah's photo, was truly gone. Before the walls hardened, before the quiet grief set into her bones, Zara had been someone else. She was 21, in a crisp white uniform, hurrying between lectures and late shifts at the hospital. Elijah was 3 then, chubby-cheeked, clumsy, always laughing. She'd prop her textbooks on the kitchen counter while stirring oatmeal, memorise anatomy terms while folding his tiny clothes. Her life was held together by thin thread and fierce love, but she believed that was enough. Her dreams were simple: a degree, a job, a safe apartment with a door she could lock behind them at night. She didn't need luxury, just peace, just time. But peace doesn't come easy when your child's father has a temper and a lawyer. The first time he hit her, it was behind closed doors. The second time, it left a bruise. The third time, she called the police and found herself questioned more than protected. He filed for custody a month later. Zara fought. She showed up to court alone in shoes, with worn soles and a borrowed coat. He arrived in a suit with character witnesses. He said she was unstable, that she worked too much, that her apartment was unfit. She tried to explain she had to work, she was trying to finish school, that everything she did was for Elijah. But the system didn't care about trying. It cared about appearances, it cared about paperwork and pay stubs and stability. And so, in a beige courtroom that smelled like dust and coffee, Zara lost the right to be called primary caregiver. It didn't happen all at once. First she had to ask to see her own son. Then she had to visit him under supervision. Then the calls stopped. His father changed numbers, moved cities, claimed new beginnings. By the time Zara saved enough for a lawyer, Elijah was gone. She dropped out of nursing school that year. Not because she wanted to, because she couldn't bear to learn how to heal bodies while hers stayed broken. She got a job bagging groceries, then another. The world said she failed, that she lost. But deep inside she still carried the truth. She didn't lose Elijah because she stopped loving him. She lost him because survival demanded everything she had and still asked for more. It was nearly closing when Zara heard the knock. Not at her door, at the store's back entrance. She'd stayed late to sweep. The night manager had called in sick and no one else volunteered. She didn't mind the quiet. The silence let her breathe. Another knock, hesitant. Software almost apologetic, she unlocked the heavy metal door. A boy stood there, small, thin, maybe 12. Hood pulled low, shoes soaked from rain. His arms were trembling, but he didn't ask for anything. He simply held something out. Her wallet. Zara stared. Her heart skipped. She hadn't lost it. She was sure. It had been in her coat pocket all day. She hadn't dropped it. She couldn't have. But there it was. Worn brown leather, broken clasp. The boy didn't speak, just met her gaze with eyes far older than his face. Then he turned and vanished into the alley, swallowed by night before she could say a word. Zara stood frozen in the doorway, the wallet pressed to her chest. It took her a moment to go back inside, a moment longer to open it. All the cash was there, but something else was too. Tucked where the photo should have been was a scrap of lined paper, folded twice, smudged at the edges, written in pencil, messy but careful. "You look like my mom, but you're not her." Her hands went cold. She checked again. Her son's picture, gone. In its place, that note. She stared at it, heart thudding like it wanted out of her chest. The words didn't make sense. "You look like my mom, Was it some mistake? A prank? But those eyes, that boy, he hadn't looked like he was playing. He looked hollow, like someone had carved the light out of him and left only shadows. That night, Zara didn't sleep. She kept replaying the moment, the knock, the boy's face, the way he never spoke but still said everything. She searched the internet for missing children. Nothing matched. She called the non-emergency line, hung up before they answered. The city felt suddenly unfamiliar, and for the first time in years, she felt something besides numbness. It wasn't hope. It was something sharper, something raw, like an old wound reopening from the inside, and it whispered, "Find him." Zara found herself walking with purpose she didn't understand. The next night after closing, she packed a small paper bag, some sandwiches, a bottle of water, a soft granola bar she'd once saved for herself. She told no one, didn't even let the thoughts fully form, just moved, as if her body remembered something her mind couldn't name. She waited near the alley where he'd vanished. Nothing. Then, just as she turned to leave, she saw a flicker, his outline darting between shadows. He didn't come to her, so she left the bag near a crate and stepped back. The boy emerged minutes later, cautious, silent. He crouched like an animal, unsure if a hand might strike. When he saw the food, he paused, looked around, then took it. Disappeared again. It became a pattern. She never spoke. He never waved, but each night she left a small offering, and each night it was gone. On the fourth night she broke the rhythm. She followed him, staying far behind, heart pounding, afraid of what she might find. He weaved through side streets, alleyways, cut behind shuttered stores and rusted fences, until finally he ducked beneath a bridge. Zara stopped at the edge. Below her, the world changed, concrete and trash, a thin line of water reflecting the city lights above. The boy moved to a corner tucked behind broken pallets and an overturned shopping cart. That's where he curled up, beneath a threadbare blanket, shoes still on, arms wrapped around himself like armour. Zara's throat tightened. She'd seen many forms of suffering, her own, her mother's, women in waiting rooms praying for mercy. But nothing prepared her for this. The boy's back rose and fell with each shallow breath. His legs were too long for the blanket. His fingers clutched the fabric like it might vanish. No child should sleep like that. Not in cold, not in silence, not alone. She didn't move, didn't call out, just stood there as the wind picked up, sharp and cruel. She felt it slice through her coat and imagined what it must be like with nothing but that threadbare blanket. Something inside her gave way, not loudly, not all at once, just a crack, a quiet collapse that began in her chest and spread outward, grief folding in on itself, quietly, completely. She went home that night empty and forever changed. The next night she waited, not near the alley, not from a distance. She stood beneath the bridge, near the rusted beam where he curled himself into sleep, holding a thermos of warm soup and a blanket that still smelled faintly of her detergent. When he appeared, cautious and lean like a stray caught between instinct and need, she didn't move. "I won't hurt you," she said softly. He paused, eyed the blanket, the thermos, her face. "I know," he said, almost a whisper. She handed him the food. He took it, sat a few feet away. They ate in silence. She watched him from the corner of her eye, how carefully he unwrapped the sandwich, how he folded the napkin after wiping his mouth, how his lashes curved exactly like Elijah's. "What's your name?" she asked. He hesitated, then barely audible. "Malik." The sound hit her like a blow. Her breath caught. She blinked too hard. That's a strong name," she managed. He shrugged. "My mum picked it." Her voice wobbled. Where is she?" He looked down. "Gone." Zara's hand trembled. She tried to hide it in her lap. Her mind spun in impossible circles. She hadn't heard that name spoken in years, but it wasn't just the name. It was his face, his eyes, the shape of his jaw. Older, thinner, bruised by the world, but still. She reached into her coat, pulled out the wallet he'd returned days ago. I want to show you something. He tilted his head. She opened it slowly. There, beneath the billfold, tucked between old receipts, was the note he'd left. You look like my mom, but you're not her. Whose wallet is this, Malik? She asked gently. He frowned. It was hers. I found it a long time ago after we moved. She dropped it. I kept it. His voice dropped. It's all I had. Zara's hands clenched around the leather, because the photo was gone. But she knew this wallet. The torn seam in the corner, the tiny heart sticker Elijah had stuck there when he was 4, the faint pen mark on the inside flap. She didn't lose it last week. She lost it years ago. Malik, she whispered, tears rising. Do you remember your other name? He looked up, eyes narrowing. Elijah Malik Evans. Her voice cracked. He froze, and for a long, breathless moment, neither of them spoke. Because somehow, impossibly, she had found her son, and he had returned to her without even knowing it. The papers were signed within weeks. Zara sat in the courtroom, with a social worker beside her and a file of evidence thicker than a phone book. Missing persons reports, shelter logs, a DNA match. The state called it a reunification process, as if love could be filed and stamped and labelled complete. Malik never looked at her during the hearing. He stared at the floor, arms crossed, hoodie pulled low. Zara didn't blame him. They gave her temporary custody pending evaluation, therapy sessions, family visits, weekly check-ins. Bureaucracy built to keep things measured, safe. But nothing about it felt safe. The first night Malik stayed with her, he refused to sleep in the bed. He lay curled on the floor, with his jacket under his head, eyes open long into the dark. She offered warm meals. He barely touched them. She tried to talk, asked about music, books, school. He gave one-word answers, sometimes just shrugs. So eventually she stopped talking. Not because she gave up, but because she understood. Words wouldn't fix this. He didn't want apologies, or explanations, or promises too late to matter. So she gave him something else. Silence. Presence. She stopped trying to win him back. She just showed up. She sat near him when he did homework, didn't ask if he needed help. She left his laundry folded on the couch without notes. She made tea for herself, poured him a second cup, and left it there, without asking if he wanted any. Some nights he poured it down the sink, but some nights she'd find the empty cup in the drying rack. He still wore his hoodie at the table, still flinched if someone knocked too loudly, still checked the locks twice before bed, but slowly, so slowly, he started sitting closer, not touching, not speaking more, just closer. He began falling asleep on the couch instead of the floor. He let her tuck a blanket over him once. That night, she cried quietly in the kitchen, not because he forgave her, but because he let her stay. Sometimes love isn't loud, sometimes it's not healing, sometimes it's just surviving the same room and hoping one day silence turns into safety. The new apartment smelled of fresh paint and lemon cleaner. It wasn't fancy. 2 small bedrooms, creaky floors, a second-hand couch that sagged in the middle. But it was theirs. No laundromat downstairs, no neighbours screaming through the walls. Just enough light through the windows to make it feel almost soft. Zara let Malik choose his room. He picked the smaller one, said he liked the corner. It made him feel tucked in. She didn't argue. They unpacked slowly, a plate at a time, a pair of socks, a drawing tacked to the wall. His drawings came first, sketches of birds, buildings, sometimes faces that looked like fragments of memory. She taped them up without comment, One night she made pasta with too much garlic. He didn't complain, didn't compliment either. But when she looked in the sink later, the plate was clean. That was something. He still flinched when she moved too fast, still tensed when someone buzzed at the door. But one afternoon, as they watched a rerun on the small TV, he leaned against her knee, his head rested just barely on her thigh. She held her breath. Then slowly she reached down and touched his hair. He didn't move away. He let her fingertips graze his curls. Let her rest her hand there for a moment, longer than chance. She read to him sometimes now, quietly, from old library books. He wouldn't ask, but he never said no. He listened from his bed, eyes open, until they drifted shut mid-sentence. He started leaving notes on the fridge. Drawings. One was of her. A small woman with tired eyes, holding an umbrella over a boy in the rain. She kept that one. Fridge magnets couldn't hold it straight, but she didn't mind. The healing wasn't cinematic. No grand declarations, no tearful hug at the door, just slow mornings and shared silence. Laughter once in a while, soft and surprised. A walk to the store without him keeping distance. Her hand brushing his shoulder, and him not pulling away. They were beginning again, not as mother and baby, but as two people learning to be something to each other, something real, something breakable. And for the first time in years, Zara let herself believe this might not end in loss. The letter came in a crisp white envelope, too official to ignore. Zara stared at the return address like it was poison. She didn't need to open it to know who it was from, but she opened it anyway, her ex, after all these years. No apology, no explanation, just a formal request, petitioning for contact, visitation, reconnection. Reconnection. The word turned her stomach. Malik found the envelope in the trash later that night. He didn't ask, just looked at her with wide, terrified eyes and whispered, "Is he coming?" Zara didn't speak. She sat down beside him, pulled him close, and for the first time he let her hold him tightly. His fists were clenched, his breathing shallow. "No one is coming," she said into his hair. "No one gets to touch you. Not ever again." He didn't cry, but something inside him loosened, like a knot unravelling. The next morning she called her lawyer. "Do we need to file a response?" he asked. She was quiet for a moment, then she said it. Just one line. "We decline. No legal battles, no visitations, no negotiations." She wasn't interested in a compromise. She was not that young girl anymore. Broke, silenced, desperate to be believed. She was a mother now, fully and without question. And Malik, he wasn't a bargaining chip in someone else's redemption arc. He was her son. She made dinner that night like nothing had happened. Malik helped slice vegetables, careful and focused. At the table, she told him jokes from the worn-down joke book he liked. He groaned at the punchlines, but his shoulders relaxed. Later, she found a new drawing on the fridge. It was a house with two stick figures in the window, one tall, one smaller, both smiling, no shadows in the background. She pressed her hand to the paper, fingers trembling. The past had tried to claw its way back in, but she'd shut the door. She'd chosen not to fight, but to protect, not to forgive a man who never asked, but to guard the boy who never should have been hurt. For the first time in her life, Zara felt like a mother who could finally keep her child safe. And she did, with just 2 words: "We decline." Evening. Sunlight poured through the windows, golden and soft, washing the apartment in the kind of light that made everything feel gentler than it was. Zara stood at the sink, rinsing rice, the smell of onions and spices curling through the air. Behind her, the quiet rustle of Malik's pencil on paper filled the space like music. No TV, no hum of distraction, just the hush of a home that had learned to breathe again. He hadn't said much all day, but that wasn't unusual. Their language had become quieter. Gestures, glances, a cup placed beside another, a coat hung up without asking. There was peace in that silence, a kind of trust that didn't need noise. She turned when she heard him step behind her. He held something out, a drawing. He didn't say a word, just waited. She dried her hands and took it gently, black pencil lines on off-white paper. A woman stood holding a child, arms wrapped around him, eyes closed, the child's face buried in her shoulder, their outlines strong, rooted, like they belonged to the ground beneath them. At the bottom, in careful block letters, he'd written, "This time, she found me." Zara stared at it, her breath caught, slow and quiet. She ran her fingers over the page, then pressed it to her chest. Her chin trembled. She didn't speak. She couldn't, because there were no words big enough for what it meant, for the ache that had finally begun to leave her body, for the guilt that had held her hostage for years, for the boy she'd once feared she'd never see again, standing here, handing her a truth she hadn't dared to hope for. Tears slipped down her cheeks, soft and silent. Malik didn't panic, didn't freeze. He stepped forward, and this time he wrapped his arms around her. They stood there, in the warmth of that dying sun, folded into each other like pages of a story still being written. No more courts, no more searching, no more being lost. Just this, a boy, a mother, a drawing held between them. Zara smiled through her tears, and for the first time in a very long time, she felt whole.